texture and tangy flavor, I'm using creme fraiche in my streusel-topped plum pie. As it cooks, the creme fraiche in the filling balances out the sugar in the plums and turns custard-like for a really memorable dessert. We're starting first with the crust. Of all-purpose flour, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of sugar, and let's just process that a little bit, mix it up. I'm doing it right in the food processor because it does it so quickly. The butter, icy cold, 1 stick, 1/4 pound, unsalted creamery butter, and 1 egg yolk. And you can just pulse this. You don't want to overwork it because you want those pieces of butter to still be visible. And basically 2 tablespoons of very cold ice water while you're pulsing. That should do it. See, it doesn't take any time at all to make a crust. And this squeeze that holds together very nicely. So this should be wrapped in a flat disc and chilled at least an hour. So there are 3 parts to this delicious pie. The crust, of course, which we've just made. Now the streusel topping, and then the filling. In a medium bowl, whisk together 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 3/4 cup of confectioner's sugar, baking powder, 3/4 teaspoon, and some salt, 1/4 teaspoon. And into this, cut your butter, 1½ sticks of cold, unsalted butter, cut into 1/4-inch cubes. And I find that if you cut the butter while it's really, really cold, you'll be able to get these nice cubes, which makes it much easier to cut. You want it rough. I'm using a pastry cutter, which is the same thing in my family as an egg salad cutter. You cut the hard-boiled eggs with this, and you just want to set this aside until you fill your pie. And now to roll out our dough. So here is our chilled dough. This can be fitted right into a 9½ or 10-inch pie plate. You can fold it like this. If it's sturdy enough, you can roll it on your rolling pin to unroll it into the dish, and then with your fingers, press it down into the dish and just cut it evenly all the way around. I like an overhang. I'm just cutting it off where it hits the counter. So your crust will be pretty even all the way around. I'm looking forward to making this. And I make a lot of pies because I like to give everybody who works on my farm a pie to take home. Then I fold this underneath, so that it can be fluted. And there are many ways to flute an edge. You can use 2 fingers and a 3rd finger and go like this. Makes a nice scallop. You can use a fork like this. There's a million different ways to do it. And don't forget to dock the bottom with your fork. Just a few of these will help prevent the bottom from erupting while it's baking. So you can just put this in the freezer for 30 minutes or in the refrigerator for an hour or so. Now we have a pie crust that's already docked, already fluted. That's a beautiful one. Now you can fold your paper like this, or you can crumple it, whichever way you feel comfortable, and pour in your well-used beans. Beans, this is just a combination of beans I've been using for years and years to add as pie weights. And this goes right to 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, lift out the parchment paper with the weights and bake an additional 12 to 16 minutes until golden brown. The crust has come out of the oven. Look how beautiful it looks. Now for the filling. You need 1½ pounds of plums, a pinch of salt. We're going to macerate the fruit first for just about 15 minutes. 2 tablespoons of sugar. The sugar will start the plums to soften, and this is called maceration. The plums have all been pitted and quartered. We have some here that have already macerated, and we have our streusel topping here, and we have 5 tablespoons of creme fraiche. 2 tablespoons go in the bottom of the crust, and just spread this, pretty much cover the crust. This will help keep the crust from getting soggy. That's that. And now 1/3 of this streusel topping gets here. This is an unusual construction, but an utterly delicious one. And now all of your plums fitted right into the crust. The rest of the creme fraiche can now be dotted on top of the plums. Doesn't matter where it goes, just as long as it's evenly spread. Now the rest of your streusel. Now this goes into your 375 degree oven, and it will bake for 50 minutes until the creme fraiche and juices of the plums are bubbling and the streusel is a golden brown. If the crust is getting too brown around the edges, you can just cover the whole pie with a nice little collar like this. You can just make that out of a double layer of aluminum foil. So now let the pie cool when it comes out of the oven. Now it looks like a different pie. That's because the plums have really collapsed. When you need a dessert that errs on the side of less sweet, particularly for a grown-up dinner party, this pie is the perfect pie. Enjoy it. The key to the rich flavor and moist texture of this pistachio rhubarb cake is the addition of whole milk yogurt. But what really catches your eye is the pop of color on top of the cake, thanks to roasted rhubarb. Let me show you how to roast the rhubarb. Mix 1 pound of rhubarb cut into 3-inch pieces with a little bit of salt, a quarter of a teaspoon, half a cup of sugar, and some butter. A tablespoon of butter just cut into little pieces. And just mix that together. We're going to bake this in the oven until it's soft and tender and the juices have run. And so we can do that right on a piece of parchment. It will bake with the sugar. Just make sure it gets on the parchment. Spread it in a single layer. Get that right into a 400 degree oven for about 15 minutes. And you can move it around a little bit after a few minutes. This is what it looks like when it comes out of the oven. So to start, we must grind our pistachios. I'm using a half a cup of fresh pistachio nuts. Out of the shell, of course. So grind those up. It adds a texture to the cake and a very nice flavor. We're almost making a pistachio flour out of these pistachios. We don't want pistachio butter, we want sort of pulverized pistachios. That looks good. Now, to this, add the rest of your dry ingredients. 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, some salt, 1.5 teaspoons, and you can just process this a little bit with the nuts. And that's it. And now to make the batter, cream 1 stick of unsalted butter and beat until nice and light and fluffy with 1 cup of sugar. And add 2 eggs, one at a time. And 1 1/4 teaspoons of vanilla. When everything is well incorporated, you can start adding your dry ingredients alternately with 1 cup of whole milk yogurt. Good whole milk yogurt is really thick, really tasty. It adds a tanginess to your batter and a lovely moist quality to your batter. If you can't find that yogurt, you can substitute buttermilk or milk that has been spiked with just a little bit of lemon juice or even cider vinegar. So this looks very nice. Put the cake batter right into a buttered, floured cake pan, and there is a round of parchment paper that's also buttered and floured in the bottom. This is an 8-inch by 2-inch cake pan. So there is a real texture in here because of the pistachios. It's a unique flavor and the color, so you'll know what they are. And it's fun to use all these different dairy products in your baking. It really does change the taste and the nutritional value of your baked goods. To incorporate fresh buttermilk, fresh yogurt, creme fraiche, sour cream could be added to that list. Get your batter nice and flat Now one last step before you pop this into your preheated oven, and your oven should be preheated to 325 degrees. Now remember, what you're going to see is the top of your cake. So we're going to use half of this baked rhubarb, randomly placed on top of the batter, and the rest of this rhubarb we're going to use with whipped cream for serving the cake. Now for a little added sweetness, sprinkle the cake with 2 tablespoons of sugar. And this goes into your 325 degree oven, 75 minutes, or until the texture comes out clean. But set your timer for 65 minutes and start checking. So this is what our cake looks like when it comes out of the pan. Let it cool in the pan for at least 15 minutes. Run a knife around the edge of the pan, and then invert the cake onto a cutting board. Then re-invert it onto a wire rack and let the cake cool completely. You can serve this cake with lightly sweetened whipped cream, with the remaining rhubarb, with ice cream, whichever way you choose to serve it. This rich cake is definitely a keeper. Try it.